In this video I'm going to show you how to sketch the alphabet of lines, and we will do this with a straight edge or a ruler in this video, and that's fine. You could actually use a credit card if you want, or just any kind of straight edge. But you'll see on my paper that you have the different line types on the left, and you'll draw the appropriate line in this box. I've actually given you dots to line up as endpoints for your line, so you can make this nice and neat. Also, some lines are drawn, and you can reference your workbook about this. But some lines are drawn thick, and some lines are drawn thin. On the I don't know, might be a little hard to see, but on the lines that we draw thick, I want to use a dull pencil, and on the lines that we draw thin, we'll just use a sharper pencil. Okay. Also, with the thicker lines, you can press down a little harder on your pencil and maybe a little lighter on the thin lines, and I'll tell you which one's which. There are actually some very specific measurements that you use to sketch the alphabet of lines. Okay. And for example, thick lines are supposed to be 0.6 millimeters or 0.024 inches. Thin lines, just as thin as you can possibly make them. Okay, and still be visible. Uh, and when we get to like hidden lines, for example, there are some specific measurements about how long the dash should be and how long the gap between the dash should be. But we'll cover those as we go along. So remember, visible lines are used to show the edges, the visible edges of objects. Okay, and that's the first one we'll draw, and that's just a thick line. So we'll just draw, and it's a continuous line as well. So we'll just draw a line from endpoint to endpoint. And that is our visible line. Okay, nothing special there. All right, the next line type is a hidden line type. Now this is drawn thin. Okay, and the dash of a hidden line is supposed to be 3.2 millimeters or 0.12 inches, and the gap between the dashes is supposed to be 0.8 millimeters or 0.03 inches. Okay, so that's what you want to try to aim for, but more for this exercise, if you don't have a ruler, just try to make sure that yours is proportional to mine, and look at the number of dashes. So I'm actually going to use I'm going to do a little rounding. I'm going to use my ruler here, okay, and I'm going to go end to end. Remember, this is a thin line type, and the dash is supposed to be 3.2 millimeters, but we're going to draw it 3, okay, just to round. And then I'm going to pick up my pencil for a millimeter and then draw another dash of 3 millimeters. Okay, and this is not exact. And I'm drawing these a little bit heavier than I normally would, just to make sure it shows up on the video. And this is a little bit time consuming actually, but this is the way things were once done. Now you may be thinking, well, I'll never have to do this. Well, you may go into a set of plans one day and need to make a change and realize there is no CAD version. You might actually have to change the set of plans by hand. So it is possible. So that's what your hidden line type should be. Basically, the dash is 3 millimeters and the gap is 1. Okay, and this is supposed to be drawn thin, so I drew it with a sharp pencil. Okay, the next is a center line. Okay. Oh, by the way, hidden lines, of course, represent the edges of hidden surfaces or hidden edges. Okay, center lines are used to they indicate symmetry. Okay, it normally shows the center line of a cylinder or an axis. Okay, and center lines are drawn with a long dash, a gap, a short dash, a gap, and then a long dash. Okay, and those repeat. Now, the the long dash can be anywhere between 19 and 38 millimeters. The short dash can be uh, again like 3.2 millimeters, just like the hidden line. Okay, now on the long dash they should be the same. Okay, in other words, you're going to have two long dashes, and those should be the same length. And then your short dash, of course, it has its own length. The gap in between the dashes will be 1.6 millimeters. So what we're going to do, we're going to do a little rounding again, and I'm going to just measure out. Okay, so the distance between my dots is 60 millimeters. Well, halfway between that is 30. Okay, and my short dash is supposed to be 3.2 millimeters. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw on each side of my midpoint there, and then I'm going to skip 2 millimeters and draw it all the way out to the end. Skip 2 millimeters, draw it all the way out to the end. Now I believe the long dashes will be about 26 millimeters on each end, okay, which is well within the range. Okay, so that's what a center line looks like when drawn by hand. Okay, the next spot is for dimension and extension lines, and both dimensions and extension lines are drawn thin. So we'll use our sharp pencil. Dimension lines show the extent of the dimension that's being measured, and the extension line is a line that extends to the edge of the surface being measured. And I want you to draw both of those in the same box. Now, extension lines vary in length. Okay, so to demonstrate this, I'm just going to draw some vertical lines and just make sure that they're the same length, whatever they are. But let's just draw them just like that, or pretty close to the same length anyway. But make sure they're vertical, and mine are not quite the same length, so I'll clean that up a little bit. And then I'll draw the that's the extension line, and I'll draw the dimension line in between, and I'll put the arrowheads on the dots. Again, this is supposed to be drawn thin, and right in the middle we need to leave room for a dimension figure, which is our actual number. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just leave a little space there, and I'm just going to letter in the number 2. Okay. Okay. And then I will draw the arrowheads. And actually that was a very poor arrowhead. They're supposed to be longer. But that will do the trick. Okay, so the next spot is for a cutting plane or a viewing plane line. We're just going to draw, your choice. Okay, remember and you can reference your workbook for this. There are two ways to the cutting plane and viewing plane lines. They can have a series of dashes, or they can have a long and then two shorts and a long, two shorts and a long. So just to make it easier on myself, I'm going to do the series of dashes. Okay, and at these endpoints, that's where I'm going to draw my line straight up. Now, with the cutting plane line or viewing plane lines, these are drawn thick. So I'm going to switch back to my my dull pencil, and I'm going to draw a little bit heavier. Now, the dashes should be about 6 millimeters, and the gap between the dashes should be about 2. Okay, so I'm going to draw this heavy. 6. Pick up my pencil. I'm losing count. This is actually kind of hard to see with the glare from the recording equipment.